What's up, guys? Really excited about this week. This is Brandon Lunsford. He is a low-key, kind of behind the scenes kind of guy in this industry, but he has a juggernaut of a company and a suite of companies between he and his brother that he's created and that he's executed in the past in building, growing, and exiting a business. So we talk a little bit about that, talk about the love of entrepreneurship and kind of what got him into this. Talk about company culture building, which is important, I think, even if you're a two-man shop or if you're a solo thinking about becoming a multi in the future. It's worth thinking about culture from the beginning because this is someone who's done it and done it well over the years. We also talk about pest and ancillary services a ton because that is going to be a central theme, I think, for a lot of you going into next year, thinking about how you're going to diversify revenue, offer more services, how to roll it out without a conflict of interest, and how to do it ethically. I think that is something our industry historically has shied away from and not been great at. He talks about it from a purely business standpoint and how to do it well, service the client, make sure they're happy, and grow the bottom line of your company. So I'm pumped because he is such a great businessman that a lot of people have not heard from in this industry. So I think this episode is going to be amazing for anyone at all levels of business. So take what you can from it. Let us know what you think in the comments about the episode and enjoy. All right, Brandon, thanks so much for joining me. I was so pumped from the second we booked this, especially with your notes. But welcome. Thank you for making time.
Hey, thanks so much for having me. I'm really excited to be here.
See the Georgia football in the background. Good time to be a Georgia fan.
It is. We've kind of been on the cusp of doing some good things for many years and had a lot of heartbreaks and we have had two great seasons and yeah, I went to Georgia, graduated from Georgia, so super excited.
Great time to be a fan. I have a buddy who's having a 40th soon and he wants to go to an SEC big time game and like experience like the tailgate culture and all that. And so I can't wait for it. Hopefully we make it happen.
Yeah, come to Athens.
Yeah, right on. The reason why I'm excited about this chat for the listeners, there's so many what I call really impressive people in this industry that have accomplished a ton, that share their knowledge in little pockets, but necessarily not to everyone. That, everyone may not know who you are. And so if you want to just give a brief rundown of kind of your accomplishments, but again, you're one of the most impressive people in the business with so much knowledge to share. We can get into your past as we go through the conversation, but yeah, just give us a quick primer where you're from, kind of everything you've accomplished in a short time in this business and in pest.
Hey, you are too kind. But just to really quickly, my background, been involved in pest control and home inspections for a little over 20 years. My dad was a longtime pest control single man company operator. He got into home inspections in the 90s, then jumped out of home inspections, was just doing pest control. I got into pest control, was out in the field doing all the stuff to try to grow the business early on, and really wasn't sure what direction my life was going to take at the time. I just graduated from college, and long story short, just started growing the pest control side of it. Really saw an opportunity to bring back home inspections to kind of marry it all under one umbrella, and bought the business from my dad, my brother, and I in 2006. Grew it for 12 straight years, had a lot of success, and then exited the business in 2019, the pest control portion, but kept the home inspection side. So that business is called Inspectall. I own a business called LunsPro Home Inspections in Atlanta and Charlotte now. Got about 25 inspectors between those two markets, and just jumped back into pest control as well in both Atlanta and Charlotte also. So yeah, that's me.
Couldn't stay away from the pest world, huh? Like obviously an amazing exit. I've talked to you and your brother, plenty about it. Safe to say a life-changing exit, but you couldn't stay away, huh?
Couldn't stay away. It's these two businesses work so well hand in hand. It's the inspection business is such a great lead source for pests, and so sat on the sidelines for a few years and jumped back in it. So I'm excited.
That's great. I love hearing that. And pest is obviously a big topic right now. I think in a slower environment, you hear a lot of inspectors wanting to diversify and add on services. Obviously, you've done it many times and at a really high level. Any little notes or advice you would give to anyone listening who's like, oh, I've been pest curious?
Well, the advice I would give is it is not all roses. The pest control business is very heavy. It takes a lot of lifting, a lot of manpower, a lot of equipment, a lot of selling really below average cost services to kind of build up a big book of business. So like I always say, you have to have a stomach for it. You have to be able to withstand the storms that come with it, the ups and the downs, the slow season in the wintertime. So you really need to jump in with the knowledge, knowing that you're not going to make a lot of money in this business, at least early on. And it's really for somebody like me who's going to grow it really fast. I'm going to lose money for at least a couple years. And the idea is to build up a book of business that's valuable, whether you keep it or sell it or whatnot. But just know going in, it takes a lot.
I like that a lot. That point of it's going to be a loss leader, and think of it like any other, whether it's like a financial advisor or an accountant that builds book of business where it compounds over time, and then that recurring revenue really works in your favor, but it ain't overnight. I think that's the takeaway.
It is a lot of headaches, a lot of sweat, a lot of tears during the process. And I'm 13 months in on the new venture, and I feel like I'm just getting over that initial hump. And so I'm excited about kind of the second year now in business for the pest side. And we've cleared a lot of the hurdles already, and still a lot to come.
Yeah, this is a basic question, but it's on almost every inspector's mind that adds ancillary services or stands up a new business. How did you think in the early days about having those complementary businesses, maybe one that feeds the other? Because it's a very, no offense to anyone listening, but I think it's a basic mindset just to say, oh, it's conflict of interest, I can't do anything else besides home inspections. That's just too simplistic in my mind. How do you approach that?
Yeah, that's a great question. So we kind of fought against that. I would say back in 2005, 2006, we were just doing pest control at the time. My brother and I knew that our dad had done home inspections in the 90s, and we were like, why not bring that back? Dad, you can be our first inspector. And we had so much pushback from the industry to say you can't do both, especially we did it under one umbrella. And we kind of tripped into the lead source side of it. We really just brought in home inspections at the time just to have another income source. And we really didn't think too much at the time about, cross marketing and all that. And then, then the recession hit in 2007, 2008. So that kind of, fortunately, we were doing things differently from a home inspection standpoint. We still grew during that. But we never really saw it until years later as being the inspection business as being a lead source for the pest business. And it just kind of naturally happened to us. We were young, naive, just kind of tripped into it. But we were well positioned for, 10 straight years of capitalizing on it. And now looking back, I'm like, sitting on the sidelines for a few years like I have, I was ready to jump back in and take advantage of it. And I do it now under a different name. And that's probably a little different than what we did back then. We did it under one company name, one umbrella. I do it under, in both markets, I have a different pest control name. And so it does create a little bit of a separation, but I think either way, as long as you're providing a good service, the same inspector is not actually performing the actual work. I don't see it as a conflict of interest, and I would encourage other inspection companies to do it.
Yeah. And do you find that people generally don't care as long as they have a solution that they're looking for?
They don't. And I mean, taking it back 10, 15 years ago, we were doing like digital reports back then, for pest control. So we would go in a crawl space and find termites, and we'd have a picture to back it up. So it wasn't like that we were, selling something that the client didn't need. We were providing a service that we felt like they needed. We gave them a great price. We show up on time, did what we said we were going to do. And so I think the agents took to it really well. It seemed like the only negativity we ran into at the time, and again, this is 15, 17 years ago, was just from the industry, from the other inspectors who had been in the industry for so long, and they would always tell us it was a conflict of interest and stuff. But we didn't listen to it. We did everything ethical and just grew the heck out of the businesses, both sides of the business, for many years.
I just love how matter of factly you stated that, because I do think it's a like liability conscious, conspiratorial kind of industry. And let's be real, most people in other parts of the country, world, society, jobs don't care. Like, you go to the mechanic, they tell you the 5 things that are wrong, and I'm like, can you do all 5? If you could wash my car, I'd let him do it. I don't care.
I'm the same way. Same, yeah. And like I said, that's kind of what we did with, we were already doing on the pest control side anyway. So it was like it was just kind of natural to be able to, offer that service. And so we were like, hey, we're out there at the client's house. In this case, it was a buyer doing a home inspection. We're like, we can do the service. And it seemed like a natural fit. The person was already there. They met you. They wanted to do business with you. They liked you. And so we did it, and we did it under one umbrella, and it worked for many years. And I've heard you and Mike talk about on your podcast before, kind of the David versus Goliath stuff, especially in the tech space. You came in as kind of an outsider, and I felt, in some way, my brother and I were similar, because we didn't know how these other inspection companies worked. Our dad was our only inspector, and he, he didn't plug into the industry or anything like that. And my brother and I, neither of us had worked for a big pest control company either. So we didn't know the big box mentality. So we were kind of going against the big players of the world, and we just didn't know what we didn't know. And I think that kind of that being that naive actually helped us. We just kind of said, let's just do what makes sense. We really kind of paved our own path, and it worked well for us.
Yeah, I love the outsider mentality, because you said you've never done a home inspection, right?
I have never done a home inspection. I spent a few years in the field back in the early 2000s doing pest control. So I know the service side of it, but I've never done a home inspection myself.
To me, that is amazing. Harmony Brown, Greenworks, same position, where it's a badge of pride almost. I think, like, you don't have to have done one to build a great business, build team, leadership, and culture, which we're going to get into. But I think that's just an amazing signal that says there's so much more to this business than performing the home inspection. So it's a small piece of it.
It is. And I think, because we were growing the business, say in 2006, when we first started doing home inspections again, 2008, 2009, 2010, we were adding inspectors every year and growing, just because we were doing stuff different. I didn't know how to do a proper home inspection. I didn't know how to guide my dad and what to do and guide the second guy. So we were like, what makes sense? Okay, let's figure out ways to send a picture of the inspector out to the buyer and the buyer's agent before we get out there. So we were just doing stuff totally different than what the marketplace was doing at the time, both in the pest world and the inspection world. And we were gaining market share and growing because of that. And I think, so that kind of not knowing really actually helped us, because we were just kind of building things from the ground up. And it sounds like that's what you guys have kind of done with Spectora.
Yeah. Yeah. It was, I'd be curious to hear what some of those growth kind of levers were, but for us, it was like, just listen and be open and keep showing up. Kind of, it's like things that don't have to do with necessarily software or home inspections. And you can learn a lot by having humility and saying, hey, look, I don't know, you're in the field, you tell me what makes sense, and then we'll handle this side of it.
Yeah. And I think, that's helped, I think my companies grow over the years. Is I have never thought that I've known, I'm not a know-it-all. I love learning from new people. I'm constantly growing as a leader. And, I would, even when we were, say, $7.5 million, combined revenue between the two businesses, several years ago before we sold, I would get a brand new technician in, I'd interview him myself and say, tell me what you liked about the other company that you worked for, and I would take those ideas and put them into our business, and just kind of take best practices from everyone, and just make our business just a little bit better each time. And I still do that today. And I think that kind of having that, the humble attitude of like, hey, we're always here to learn. And I know you and I share the common interest with IEB. There's a lot of that in there, where we're just constantly sharing ideas and learning from others. And we've taken advantage of that over the years, and hopefully have helped others as well.
I love that. So early on, you guys, when you were selling services or doing the growth activities, how did you handle the disconnect between, like, hey, I'm not going to be the one doing the inspection, but I'm telling you about our brand? Or like, what did that even look like for those that may want to put on that business builder hat that don't think it's possible?
So I think where we're probably a little bit different than most others is we really kind of found our way in the inspection, space from a technology standpoint. We were doing a lot of digital marketing. That's how we, grew really fast on the pest control side. We were, online, reputation, such as reviews, before reviews were big. So we were really big on that. And so those first few years, as we were adding inspectors, it was mainly digital marketing, just making sure our reputation looked good online, pay-per-click, SEO activities. So we didn't do a lot of relationship building marketing until, a few years later. And we kind of had that 1099 model of like, the inspectors, each time we added them, they were highly compensated inspectors and they were doing it their own way. And so we hit kind of a ceiling of growth at some point in the future, like fast forward a few years later, we had 7, 8, 9 inspectors. Each one of them were doing it different than the other. And so we finally realized, we're like, this 1099 model doesn't scale well. And so then we had to kind of rebuild our system to build more of a W-2 model and build it out where each inspector was similar to the other. And so there were just, challenges along the way. There were kind of ceilings that we hit and kind of engineered our business to fit what would look like, for future growth.
I love that. You guys were ahead of the game, definitely with the digital stuff. Just like, certain people are taking advantage of social these last 3, 4, 5, 6 years. That's awesome that you guys were ahead of the game there.
Well, and in the pest control world, we had to, because nobody knew who we were. We are such little ants on this, on this island of these giants, the Orkins, the Terminix of the world. They had brand recognition, so we had to do something to stand out. And so for us, we were like, well, if we can build up our reviews to 50 or 100 or 500, eventually 10,000, like we got to, we're going to look a lot bigger. We're going to feel bigger. We're going to give that customer that peace of mind. And so that was our really only way to stand out. And then so we kind of carried that design on both sides of the business, and it really helped.
And that, did you say 10,000 reviews?
We ended up with 10,000 reviews, kind of at our height, between Google and Angie's List and Yelp and Facebook and all those places. So yeah,
that's insane. So let's fast forward, like real quick. We can touch on, to the extent you're willing to share, of like who you guys exited the pest business to, and just what that was like. Like, was that I'm guessing that was what was that like? I'll just leave it at that.
So at the time, we went 10 straight years of 40% sustained growth. So year over year, we were winning, like, fastest Inc. 5000 fastest growing private businesses. We had won, we got onto the PCT top 100 largest pest control businesses across the country. And so we were getting notoriety as far as, like, especially on the pest control side from an acquisition standpoint. And, my brother and I were partners at the time, and we'd run the business very lean. We early on didn't have families, so we weren't taking large incomes. So this was an opportunity for us to take a little bit of risk off the table once we got approached by the right acquirer, I should say. So we took some risk off the table, and it allowed us to kind of then pursue other business interests, each of us. So my brother, Bryant, owns a division of our business in Jacksonville, Florida. He owns 100% of it. I own the Atlanta version and the Charlotte version. And so it allowed us to kind of run separately, but also use synergies together. And I think so, between giving kind of the resources to be able to build future businesses and finding the right acquirer, so our employees were well taken care of, that was kind of the big decisions there at the time, because we'd gotten approached several years before that. We said no to the acquisition, but we found the right acquirer. It was the right timing. The M&A market in the pest control space was very good at the time. We had a great advisor. And so we made the decision to sell, and it was not an easy decision, because we both were, in our late 30s, early 40s. And we're like, we've got a lot of life left to give in business, but we're like, this is going to give us the resources and to be able to take the next businesses even further and faster. And so that's kind of, in my mind, why we sold at the time. And like you see now, we're both back in the pest control business, and I'm sure we'll do it again.
I'm so happy for you guys, just knowing, I know your brother a little bit better than you, but I've heard obviously a lot about you through him and through the IEB circles. And it's what I think our industry is just now kind of opening their eyes to, this type of exit, that it is possible, that there's liquidity to be found if you build something special enough. And taking risk off the table is never a bad move. There's never a bad day to do it.
Yeah, I agree. And I love the fact that our industry, the inspection industry, is starting to become, an M&A space. It seems like it was always just a one-man operator type of business, or maybe, a couple people, but it was never like hey, I'm going to get into this business to be able to sell it one day. And, that's what kind of gave me energy into this business, not the opportunity to sell, but the opportunity to give home inspectors a place where they didn't have to, die in a crawl space or an attic. It's like, hey, you can come here and retire with us and have 401k. And so all that sort of stuff excites me about getting up every day and running a business, is because our industry, the inspection industry seems to be heading in that direction, where it's a more sophisticated space where people can make a career out of it, exit if they want to exit. They can, maybe retire with the company, become a technical trainer when their body breaks down, maybe be, an advisor to a company. So I just love that the opportunities are getting better. And I think that the recent stuff that's happened in our industry is only a positive. And whether you want to sell or not sell and keep it forever, I think it's these things that are happening are positive.
Yeah, well, definitely 100%. So speaking of business building and entrepreneurship, let's dig into that just topic for a second. So you said your dad was an entrepreneur of sorts, right? Had his home inspection business, but how did you and your brother kind of learn kind of what to do and how to do it? What was the early entrepreneurship bug like for you guys?
So my dad, he was kind of a visionary, but not a follow through guy. So he had a great idea, but he didn't want to put in the work to do it. And so we are very fortunate that he kind of came up with the idea of the pest and home inspection all together, and, super thankful for that. And so I think we kind of took his vision and ran with it. And so, I guess just kind of going back to those early 2000s, I didn't know what I wanted to do. I was like, hey, this is just a, kind of a stopping, time for me, like figure out after college where I want to go next, kind of like just, where am I going to take my life and my career? And so it wasn't really until probably 2005, 2006, where I started seeing a little bit of a snowball of recurring revenue build up, because I was doing the right things. I was showing up on time. It was kind of the first time in my dad's company that somebody was doing what they were saying they were going to do. And that's probably why he stayed at a one-man company, because he was missing appointments and it was just kind of a train wreck. And so I started realizing that, like, hey, I'm going out there and they told their neighbor because I did a good service. And I was like, wow, this could actually be a career. And so it was probably about that point, 2005, 2006. And I was like, all right, if we're going to do this, let's do it the right way. Let's purchase the business from our dad. I got my brother involved in the business, and then it started taking off as kind of a career. And like I said, we tripped into a few things that were lucky, like the lead source from the home inspections. We tripped into kind of the digital marketing. We did some things that were, just kind of took certain paths that were probably a little bit more lucky than smart. But we figured out how to be leaders as we continue to grow, and, eventually brought on a leadership team for both the pest and inspection businesses. And so that's, that was kind of the progression, is just not serious, then trying to figure out, is this a career? And then once we did, it was like, now we got to figure out how to be leaders and actually how to make this a career. And yeah, so I think it all worked out, and it was not all by design, but certainly some luck along the way, and very happy with kind of everything, the way it played out.
What do you love about entrepreneurship?
Like I said earlier, I just really love the opportunities inside of the business that people have. I love giving back. I love kind of the servant leadership mentality, that serve first, building trust with your team, living out my values, always learning. So that kind of stuff just embodies like entrepreneurship if you do it the right way, and that servant leadership. And I just get up every day energized, just thinking, hey, if we expand into Charlotte like we did, a year ago, like what opportunities could that provide people that live there that might be looking for an opportunity to work for a company like us? And, over the years, seeing employees, buy their first house, or, be able to afford the car they want, or like I mentioned, maybe as an older inspector, he doesn't want to do the physical work anymore, but he can still give technical guidance. And so just building kind of an ecosystem like that, where there's just opportunity in there, is what really gives me, the most energy. And that's what gets me out of bed every day and kind of gets me going.
I love that. Mike and I very much the same, just like the opportunity creation for people, and then seeing people take the opportunity and run with it, like that just fills me up. Like it makes you want to go out of your way to find opportunity for them.
Oh yeah, sorry. I was just going to say, in our mission, it's one sentence, but I'll just kind of give you kind of the bullets of it. It's got 4 pillars. It's, one, to provide epic service. Two, to have rapid growth, because that's in my DNA. Three is to enrich lives, and then four is to give back. So, we're really big on community give back. So me building a business and having resources, we're able to then give back to the community, enriching lives of our team members, like I kind of mentioned earlier. The growth side of it, I'm super, always excited about growth. I mean, those, it gets contagious. You start winning awards, and I know you guys are a big part of that as well. You start getting that kind of bug of wanting to grow and grow fast. And I think that's what kind of provides opportunities. It creates momentum in your company. It creates excitement. And, again, going back to the first pillar, the epic service, like, you've got to do something different than your competitors. And I think that's what we always try to focus on, is like, how can we, one, give them a different type of service out in the field, or how can our customer service be better than our competitors, or what can we do from a technology standpoint? So that's kind of the way that I look at it as an entrepreneur, is like, follow that mission. And those are kind of the pillars of our mission.
I want to dig into the word epic, because I just love that you read those off, by the way, because I just did a YouTube video the other day on ideas of unique value propositions, because new inspectors, they get in the industry, and even experienced companies, sometimes you'd be shocked how many multis that are 5, 7, 10 that maybe couldn't answer those 4 pillars if you asked them. Was that intentional from the beginning? How did you guys arrive at some of those 4? Like, did you debate over epic versus other synonyms?
I'm probably a lot like some of your other, clients and people in the industry, where, you kind of were already doing these things behind the scenes, but it was really kind of hard to communicate. And, a few years ago, I was interviewing, I was interviewing potential candidates to join my business. And I was just getting frustrated because I couldn't tell them like what we do that was different. And so finally I just sat down, and this is, not too long ago, maybe 2 years ago. And I just, in like 10 minutes, just wrote the mission statement. And I was like, why didn't I do that 10 years ago? This has been locked up inside my head for so long. So yeah, it was, the word epic, kind of embodies just doing something different. And so I was just like, we were already doing that anyway. It's a word that it's outside of the norm. And so yeah, it was, probably like, Jimmy Buffett's Margaritaville written in 3 minutes. And later on, we'll look back and be like, that was actually pretty good. But there was not a lot of intention there when I sat down to write it. But I think, like I said, it was in my head for 10 years. So it was pretty easy.
But you knew it had to be different. And I think that's the takeaway here, is people use generic words like good, great, excellent, but like, you 10x'd it. And to me, I'm all about like, yeah, what's 10x of like what everyone else says?
Yeah, exactly. And that's I think what it captured. And I hire to it. So every single person that comes on our business, I interview, even if I'm not the first person to interview them. I get an interview with them. I go over the company mission. I show them our growth trajectory, both the past and the future. And I think for me, that's really important, because again, they have to be okay with growth to be able to come into our world, because we grow so fast. Even in this down market the last year, we've grown, and we just scratch and claw for every lead. And it's normal for us to grow and have that messiness, and not everybody's okay with that. And so I have to kind of warn people on the front end. I'm like, hey, I'm going to be transparent with you. We're going to offer you benefits and all this other stuff, but you got to be evolving, with us as we evolve as a company. You got to be okay with growth. And so anyway, that's why I was glad I finally kind of got it out, because I was able to share it during interviews. And that's really been big for us to hire the type of people that'll take us to the next level, like we're hiring right now.
I'm going to steal that from you, by the way. You got to be okay with growth. I think that's so well put.
Well, thank you. Yeah. And it was something that was learned over time. Those 10 straight years of 40% growth. I mean, we would build systems, and I know you guys are the same way. I mean, you guys have had such tremendous growth, but we would build systems and outgrow them like within a year. And it was so hard to keep up, and it was, but I then started realizing, hey, that it's okay. Like, there's massive businesses out there that have the same problem. We're not the only ones that have a little bit of messiness or skeletons in the closet. And so once I kind of came to terms with that, I'm like, embrace it. It's just part of our mission now.
Yeah, let's pull on that thread for a second, because to me, the growing pains, the messy middle, like, how did you come to terms with that? Was there a book you read, or did you just go through it enough to where you're like, damn, this is just how it is for anyone that's growing this fast?
Probably trial and error, but also just camaraderie in the industry. I'm friends with a lot of the IEB members. I mean, Rob Lemoyne and I have been really good friends for 15 years, even when we both had small businesses, pest and home inspections. So just bouncing ideas off of people like that, learning from others. So that's kind of just the evolution of it.
Man, I'm like ready to like interview someone now, because I think for anyone that's hiring, a lot of multis will be watching this. I think you just kind of gave just even a couple good questions and things you can talk to people about when interviewing. This all kind of to me rolls up into like company culture, which is kind of a buzzword. Like we need a new word besides culture, but we don't have one yet. So we'll go with culture. And I know it's something you're passionate about, because a couple of the things you just talked about are part of your guys' fabric because it's part of you. But how do you, yeah, what does company culture mean to you?
It's everything. I mean, that's if we didn't have a good culture, like I wouldn't be in business. I only do this because I love it. I only do this because I love the people that I work with. I love the people that surround us and make our company better. And for me, it's like to build a company culture, it's not having a great mission statement or a great vision or values. It's living it out every single day.
Right.
And that's the thing. It's hard to do because sometimes, it's like the easier thing to do is to take the path of least resistance and just, cut people when you need to cut them and be ruthless and be one of these business leaders that you see on TV. But for me, like I'll take a loss in a month to keep a good employee. I have the resources now to do it. So that's where I'm fortunate. Doing the right thing, treating people as you would want to be treated. I mean, it's all cliche stuff, but I think that's what builds the culture is just the transparency, good communication across the board. Like we're very transparent from a leadership standpoint, all the way down to all the divisions of our business. When we hire, we're transparent. We tell them the goods and the bads. We encourage open communication between the divisions. So I think just doing that in practice is really what builds the culture. And, again, it's one of those things that you can try to reverse engineer and come up with, a great saying and give them a pocket card and all this stuff. But if you're not living it out every day, they're not going to buy into that culture. So for me, it's just the action you take every single day.
That's beautiful. And let's talk about transparency for a second, because one thing that just came to mind when you said that was I've heard leaders of, from small to large companies say, or even write in and say, oh, I don't want my inspectors seeing what we made on that inspection. Do you have a feature that can hide that? Or like any number of things. To me, that's like the opposite of transparency. So from that all the way up to the company goals and mission, how do you communicate that? How often? Through which channels? Like, is it something you just kind of knew from the start you needed to get clear on and communicate?
I think, I think we do a pretty good job of it. I was talking to the leadership team recently about just more that we could do. So we're transparent on our growth. We're transparent on our profitability. We're transparent about, the commissions that we pay out, things like that. But we could do better in that regard. But again, I'm always critical of myself. I'm critical of how we can become better. But I think we do a pretty good job. But I think there's room for growth there. And I know there's some companies out there that really work with their team on, financial security for that particular individual. I'd love to do stuff like that, sit them down and talk to them about their aspirations and talk to them about 401k and the match that we provide and things like that. So that's kind of the next step for me is like, I want to get there. And that's a challenge right now for us is to take it even further than where we've taken it already.
Yeah, that's like next level. That's 201, 301, whatever's after that, because I think so many operators are just running so fast. Maybe they're in the field, maybe they're not. But I think when you don't get crystal clear on where you're going, maybe you don't feel as confident to have those transparent conversations and help someone realize their goals. What have you seen companies out there get wrong when it comes to culture?
Good question. Just not doing what they say they're going to do, just not following through with things on a day to day. Changing things up on their team just to save a dollar, like revamping systems and taking this away and, just there's a lot of discussion that, and all the groups that we're all out there a part of is like, how can we, make an extra dollar, and let's take this away from our inspectors. And, for us, what's worked, and we've kept like really, we've kept a lot of our inspectors been here for 10, 12, 13 years,
Wow.
is that we try not to mess with things unless we have to. One of them was we went from an old report system to Spectora maybe 3 or 4 years ago. And that took a lot of debate, to try to change something up, something they were used to. And we put a lot of effort into being very deliberate on any changes that were upcoming, then, giving them notice, letting them try it out. But for me, to specifically with Spectora, I wanted to give them a better quality of life. And that's part of our mission, to enrich their life. And I knew by switching to Spectora, I was going to save them a few hours at night building the report. So for me, that justified the change. But going back to your question, I mean, try not to change things up unless you absolutely have to.
Yeah. Yeah. Quality of life, huge. People don't like change in general. We're all human. I think that's clear. I had a question on the transparency piece. Like, have you ever run into difficult conversations, or have your leaders had to have difficult conversations as a result of the transparency?
Probably. Yeah, I can't think of anything that comes to mind, but yeah, I think sometimes I think I've probably lost potential candidates because of my willingness to be transparent. I'll say, hey, have you thought about this? This is something, because we grow so fast, or because you live in this area, you might have to drive too much. So I think sometimes my transparency might lose me on opportunities, but I'm okay with that, knowing that the people that do come into the world kind of know what they're expecting, and we can keep and retain employees, because of that.
Probably has saved you from many painful exits, a few months later, because we all, you and I probably know what that's like when you get it wrong, because everyone gets it wrong every once in a while. Um, and then it's painful.
Exactly.
Um, on the culture piece, is there anything you wish you like would have focused on sooner that you eventually ended up getting right? Or just like if you look back, you've got so much experience to draw on. Is there anything where you're like, you know what, that was great, wish we could have done it a couple years sooner?
I think the 1099 model for home inspections is
Mhm.
one of my kind of regrets, because that was a tough one. I talked about change. That was a tough change to make. Let's say at the time we did it, there was 12 to 15 inspectors. To switch them from a 1099 model to a W-2 was a tough change. And it was one of those that I did it because we could offer them health insurance, 401k, and all those things. But at the time for them, their take home pay was going to go down because we were going to withhold taxes. And so just looking back, I wish, and maybe this is some advice for inspectors that are just getting started, or maybe they're a smaller 1 or 2 man operation, is think about the scalability of the 1099 model. And does that make sense for you if you have 10 inspectors or 20 inspectors? And so that would be one that I would love to take back and go back 5 to 10 years earlier and switch it earlier, put them in a company vehicle, go ahead and give them the benefits and all that. And because that was a tough change when we made it, I'd say 3 years ago.
Yeah, and for what it's worth, I only remember hearing it 4, 5 years ago. I don't know if it was Philippe that kind of kicked off the conversation in the industry, or someone else, but yeah, fairly new concept, but I think a welcome one for business sustainability. And I know, yeah, short-term pain for long-term sustainability. So I looked at it.
Yeah. And it didn't scale with the commissions we were paying to our inspectors. Like, we had no room to pay management layers, to pay, a full on, growth or marketing team, to pay, the oversight that comes with that kind of large of a business. So we learned the hard way, and we made the change, and I'm glad we did.
And I mean, knowing what I know of you, you probably did it with very clear rationale and constant communication. And most of your people can get through any change if it's communicated clearly and transparently. That's what I've learned.
We were very careful about that. We didn't lose any inspectors as a result of it.
Wow.
So we were happy with that.
Speaks to the culture, just how strong it is.
Well, thank you.
Let's get into growth a little bit, because you mentioned Charlotte. I either knew that or didn't know that or forgot. What went into the geographic expansion
It's
considerations?
That for us in Atlanta is the biggest, closest market. So for us, it was an obvious target, and I have a little bit of family there, so that also helped. And so we've got 2 inspectors now full time there. Likely going to get a third soon because we're keeping them pretty busy. And I just acquired a pest control business in Charlotte to marry with that inspection business. So that was a month ago acquisition. Yeah, so I've been really busy with the integration and all that, but we're excited.
And were you going to get into Charlotte whether you acquired the business or not?
I was definitely going to start a pest control business in Charlotte, but it might have taken me another year or two without the acquisition.
Sure.
I found a really good kind of leader that came with the acquisition, and that helped. I was waiting for the inspection business to be big enough to put off enough leads to justify the pest division there. But this sped it up. And so I was happy with that because, with all the growth that we've had over the years, it's all been organic. Like I've been, little acquisition tuck-ins kind of here and there, but I mean, for the most part, 95% of our growth has always been organic. So for me, I know there's some other inspection companies that is kind of normal for, but for me, it's always been organic. So the pest control business, acquiring that one was a little bit of an outside my comfort zone thing, but I'm glad I did it. The expansion into Charlotte for inspections was organic, and we've done really well with that in a short period of time. And looking at another market, at this point, I'll be looking at a place like Nashville to go next.
Let's define for listeners, because I'm sure there's even sophisticated operators listening that may not fully know the difference between organic, inorganic growth, and just maybe even we can just riff on maybe how you think about organic growth and what it means to you.
So our business in Charlotte, I'll just take that for example. And we did it in Jackson. My brother and I, when we were partners, we did it in Jacksonville as well. So there was a little bit of history of being able to do it. But, it's really just moving an inspector to that market and or hiring somebody in that market and just literally starting from scratch. It takes a lot of marketing. Luckily, we've got a team of people on our side that is really good at that. I've dabbled in it over the years. So the marketing is big, trying to build some brand recognition there in the market by having a marketing person, growth team rep in the area. And that's kind of what's worked for us. It's just the double side of it between the digital marketing and just a one boots on the ground person. And, your goal is to try to fill up one guy's schedule. And then when he's not full, he's out there, doing growth activities. And then once you get his full, you're hiring another guy, and then he takes away some of that first guy's inspections. So the first guy's out there marketing again. And so it's just kind of like that until it gets big enough to maybe support, a little bit more infrastructure in that city. But, versus, an acquisition, you're maybe coming into a market like Charlotte. And I definitely considered this, trying to find a 2, 3, 4, 5-man company to acquire. And there's challenges with both, it's a lot slower to start organic. You got to kind of be ready to, have a lot of frustrations in that first year. There's weeks we do 10 inspections and I'm like, we're there, we're ready for a second guy. And then the next week we do 1.
Yeah, oh crap.
It's humbling. But now we're starting to kind of crack that 20 mark. And I'm like, hey, now it's time for a third guy.
And I'm guessing you have modeled it out in terms of runway dollars that you're willing to sink in and kind of a ripcord date of kind of like, hey, we got to get to this number by this date.
Yeah. And fortunately, the way we've done it for home inspection growth, we're able to kind of run pretty lean, and it's almost a break-even scenario for the first couple of years, like at least the way I'm projecting it out. Whereas pest control, 13 months in on this new venture has been quite an ordeal and quite a hit to the profitability side of the other company, because I'm stealing from Paul to pay Peter. Yep. But I knew it going into it. I expected it. I planned for it. And that's the difference. I think a lot of, if you're an inspector, listen to this and you're going to jump into pest control, just be prepared, talk to people who have done it before. I'm always available. Call me, email me, whatnot. I'll help walk you through the goods and the bads. And we did it really fast. Like we've built up a pretty nice sized chunk of business in 13 months. So we lost probably more money than maybe others might have done. So there's ways you can do it a little bit more cautiously. But you got to be ready for that. Whereas on the inspection side, it was not a huge loss. We were able to kind of make up any of the losses from the first few months and just putting some revenue through, say after month 3, and there's no turning back now. We should be in the profitability zone going forward.
Yeah, I have no doubt you guys have the playbooks, the scripts, kind of the way to get it done. Partly from your experience, and then the IEB, some of the IEB playbooks, they're undefeated when it comes to generating demand.
For sure. Yeah. And a lot of our, stuff was just learned over time. We were, like I said, young and naive and didn't have a lot to lose. And so yeah, we just kind of learned along the way and kind of adjusted the playbook as needed along the way. And yeah, so at this point, I can kind of stomach, losing money for a year or 2 years or whatever it's going to be on the pest control side, knowing that I'm building a book of business that could be valuable one day.
Sure. Do you almost treat it like if you were investing independently in another business, how, you would model it out, you'd see what you're putting in and kind of see when you can expect returns?
There's not, 1 month that goes by that I don't look at the book of business that I have now and kind of project what I think that's worth today versus what I've paid, because I'm always doing that. Hey, what if I should have just, or, woulda, coulda, shoulda, maybe I should have bought a business instead of starting it organically. So for me, looking at both the inspection side and the pest side of either the new business or the expansion, like I'm glad I chose that path that I did, even if it's not for everybody. So I'm at peace with it.
Yeah, no, that's great. And clearly you have a pretty diverse skill set. Like what was your major in college, and and we can go from there.
I was political science and criminal justice. So I was
Oh,
kind
no
of,
kidding. Okay.
yeah, I was thinking about getting into, law school. So
Yeah.
I was pre-law and came out of college and really didn't know what I was going to do. Got into pest control for my dad for just say a year. And I was just kind of thumbing around. All right, am I going to go to law school? Decided to move down to the Caribbean for a year just to kind of get away. And then once I got back, was kind of getting serious.
Yeah. So do you think a lot of you've talked about so many skills and traits and well-rounded, characteristics you need to be successful. Did you teach yourself a lot of that stuff? Like, or was it kind of just, like you said, stumbling through it and kind of saying like, okay, I guess I got to get more organized on my books and understand kind of my payback period on acquisition?
It was a lot of self-learning, a lot of trial by error, a lot of, learning from bad things that would happen. I think I remember back 2015 time range, like we had, I would just call it 75 employees and come in like an eyelash away from missing payroll because we just mismanaged the growth. I mean, we were growing at like maybe that year close to 100%. And that really, like, once that happened, I was like, man, 75 people not getting paid. It really like opened my eyes to what I didn't know. And I was like, I've got to learn how to budget and how to, read a P&L and project. And so it was just things like that, and I still feel like that every single day. I'm like, what, wow. Like if I'm going to take this business, to $20 million, like I got to step up my game as a leader and I got to learn more. And so that's just the kind of the attitude I've taken all along. And, we've made it through some of the tough times, and I'm sure there'll be some tough times ahead. And the current market right now is not making it easy. And I know there's a lot of people struggling, and I would say just stick it out, just continue to learn from the experience. We went through the recession in 2007, 2008 and learned a ton from it. And I'm going to learn a lot from this kind of, pullback right now of the market.
Yeah, no, well, let's chat on that for a second. Like what were maybe some of those like little lessons that are applicable no matter the pullback or slowdown that you learned from them that you found yourself maybe applying today?
I think what we had kind of a year ago as interest rates went up, like we kind of said internally, we're like, let's kind of clean up our own house for the next however long it's going to take. I was hoping it would only be 6 months. Now it seems to be a year later, and it's still kind of the market's still kind of puttering around. But cleaning up our own processes, rebuilding SOPs to, communication, kind of training for our inspectors and things like that. And we've been fortunate. We have grown over the past 12 months, but it's been small growth. We've fought and scratched and clawed for every single lead. We've doubled down on certain things, certain marketing efforts, and it's been a challenge. But I think it also, humbles us and says, hey, we had some 30, 40, 50% growth years leading up to this. But, our industry is still really, contingent upon the market. And, as long as we're beating the market, if the market's, for instance, in Atlanta is down 17% this year, over last year, the same time period, we're up, say 3 to 5%, hey, we're beating the market by 22%. And so when this thing, when it releases, we've gobbled up, we've doubled our market share in the past 2 years. It's the once the pie gets bigger, our slice is just going to be that much bigger. So really kind of resetting expectations, kind of being realistic with it. We can't control everything, but we can control our effort. We can control our communication. We can, get the agents to come back to use us again if we provide epic customer service. So just that sort of stuff internally is what our discussions are like for, all of our weekly and monthly kind of leadership calls.
That's the mentality. I think that's why this slowdown is it's just gonna further the gap between the haves and have-nots, because the things you're talking about, and you're already very successful and accomplished, but yet you guys are tightening up processes, making the experience better, and just gobbling market share to where if we even do see a little patch of growth, who's going to benefit? The people that are doing what you're doing, right? Not the ones that said, oh, this is like a good, year-long vacation I'm going to basically take and just kind of sit back.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, we've been doubling down. I mean, it's like, from our growth team, it's like, hey, go out there and build more relationships. If they're doing less business, you got to go out there and meet more people. We've got to provide more value to these realtors, and providing more training or more, certain classes or workshops that we provide. We got to pour into them if we really want them to give us, units back. And so that's kind of our mentality, is just to continue to just grind away. And, at some point this thing will release and we'll be in a better position because of it.
Where does that mindset come from in you? Because like, it's not, I don't want to, like, not everyone has that of kind of like, yeah. Where do you think that mindset came from with you?
I think it's just, just kind of fighting and scratching and clawing, and kind of what we talked about earlier, the David Goliath approach. I mean, when we were, say, a 5-person pest control company against a $5 billion pest control company, it was like we had to be different, and we had to stand out. We had to figure out ways to scratch and claw and fight. And so we'd get an online lead into our system, and instead of 30 minutes, we'd say, I don't want it to sit there for 30 seconds. So our communication response, we could control those things. We couldn't control, our brand recognition in the market in a short time period, but we could control how we interacted with every single lead. And then, on the inspection side, it was like, hey, we're going against these companies that have been established for 20 years and nobody knows our name. Let's do something different. Let's do infrared on every single inspection. Let's do, and that was years ago. And now it's like, hey, let's figure out how to do drones on every single inspection. Well, you got 15 inspectors. They'll never get everybody FAA certified. And we're like, yeah, we will. It's going to take us 1 year and we're going to do it. And, fast forward, a couple years, a year later, we got it. And so it's just stuff like that. And we're already looking at what's the next thing we can do, already starting to try to plan for that right now, to be different and to provide more value and to, have better communication, better training. And so I don't know if that answers your question, but just always trying to just think outside the box and do things different is really kind of what we're all about.
I'm smiling because to me, this is like the definition of like excellence and greatness. Makes me think of like I'm a big basketball guy, so like a Kobe Bryant, who he like never believed he was Kobe Bryant. He worked as if someone was always chasing him, because you're kind of Goliath now in this industry. Do you think of yourself as that way? I'm guessing you don't.
Not really. Like I think somebody's they called me like the silent assassin, because I'm not super visible on, on a bunch of calls or in the industry. Yeah. I'm just kind of behind my computer, making calls, doing Zoom interviews, or, I mean, I'm just kind of behind the scenes, kind of pulling strings and trying to make it happen and build relationships. And over a period of time, when you do that every single day, you start kind of building it up. And I think that's where we're at now. It's nothing crazy that we've done, crazy innovative. It's just being a little bit better than yesterday every single day. And I think that's kind of my mentality when I wake up every day.
Well, it's inspiring. And I think, at your level, if you can do these things, I think it inspires everyone else, from the single man shop, new inspector, all the way up to say, how do we inject some of that into our day to day?
Well, thank you. Yeah. And it's, for me, because I've never done a home inspection, I've never looked at this industry as being super technical. I just, yes, our inspectors have the right training, and I've got guys that have been in construction for 25 years and all that kind of stuff. But some of our best inspectors are 1 year onto the job, and they just have great communication skills. They want to do things different. They're bringing a whole nother level of service. So for me, it's like, I look at this industry as it's relationships, it's communication, and the technical side of it. As long as you're proficient, for me, like it's about those other things that make us stand apart. And I want to do a great home inspection, don't get me wrong, but for me, it's like, how did you show up today? How did you communicate with that agent? Those are the things that we value as a company. And yeah, maybe that's what makes us different than some others in the industry.
There's not enough training in this industry for relationship building, communication, soft skills. Like there's barely any. So it's needed.
I agree. Yeah. And we talked about change earlier, and this industry seems to be really slow to change. And maybe that's starting to change, so to speak. With some of the bigger companies that are being built up, the more sophistication, the kind of management layers that companies are putting into you're starting to see, I think, the industry evolve, because it is a young industry. I mean, it's not as old as like a pest control industry. So there's still a lot of growing up to do. And like I mentioned earlier, I'm really excited about just the new level of sophistication that's in the industry. And I love those kind of conversations. And it's less about the tools and the technical side of the industry, and way more about like, what are you doing different? How are you communicating? How are you growing? What are we doing to hold people accountable if you have a team? And I think those are the companies that are standing apart right now.
It's the only good thing I think that comes from a recession or pullback, because it makes people say, I got to change. I got to do something different because the times
Yeah.
are different. Because we've had a great bull run. Like, I mean, the market's really spoiled all of us in this industry for a lot of years.
It really has. Yep. And so, but survival of the fittest, and the companies that do persevere, and I think are going to be better positioned when things kind of release again. And companies that are gobbling up market share are just going to be in such better position, once there's more of a market to actually gain.
Definitely. Brandon, we're on time here. This has been amazing. We packed so much into this. We could probably go for another hour on some of these topics, but if people want to reach out or even learn more or find you, no pressure, because they will, what's the best way that works for you?
Hit me up. Email is great. Brandon@LunsPro.com. So LUNSPRO.com, Brandon@LunsPro.com. My company is LunsPro Home Inspections. We're in Georgia, Carolina. Like I said, my brother owns LunsPro in Jacksonville. He's a great resource too. So anytime, reach out.
I really appreciate that. And I know the community really will, because like you said, if you're not in a ton of places and you have all this knowledge and wisdom. So thank you. Thanks for showing up and sharing it. And this one's going to be a banger of an episode for sure.
Well, thanks for all the kind words. And, I feel the same way about you and Mike, what you guys have done with Spectora. Like, I'd like to turn the podcast around and listen to all the success you guys have had. So I appreciate me getting a little bit of the spotlight today, but I like it better when I'm hearing success stories like you. So thank you. And, it's definitely a pleasure to be on the podcast, and I'd be happy to come back if you ever invite me one day.
Right on. Sounds good.
All right, Kevin.